This podcast, including all discussions and examples, is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or company. This is From the Dive Shop, an ADS podcast that dives deep into the technology, innovation, and people driving America's military supply chain.
Josh, Ryan, welcome to From the Dive Shop. Appreciate you guys coming out today. Good to see you. Know we had a little bit of time to talk last couple of days, but excited to have you guys here today and in a few weeks out at Warrior West.
That's right. We are about to have Warrior West. Are you guys as excited as we are?
We are.
Absolutely.
Warrior West, ADS's big flagship West Coast event on April 29th and 30th, right?
Yep.
It's in my calendar.
Year,
I don't need to remember. So yeah, we're really excited to have you here. Really excited to meet you. Josh, Ryan, you guys are with UTAC, and we would love to hear a little bit about what UTAC is, who you are, how you got here. So who wants to talk first?
Yeah, so I'll give a little backstory. So UTAC was conceptualized in 2018. And the first UTAC, being an annual event, took place in 2019. And really the initial intent behind it was it was under FlyMotion, which is a Tampa company, and basically wanted to showcase kind of the capabilities that FlyMotion provided in a real world training type environment.
So what does UTAC stand for?
It actually doesn't stand for anything.
Oops.
Nice.
It's just it's basically just UTAC. Back originally, it stood for the Unmanned Tactical Application Conference. And that kind of faded off after about year two because it expanded beyond just unmanned.
It's like the ADS Atlantic Dive Supply relationship.
Right.
Well, and it also,
Yep.
it's not, it's moved away from just a conference. We're so much more than a conference now that we felt like we really need to just kind of refocus energy around what we are and not what the acronym could be.
Absolutely understand. So I definitely want to hear about the event. But before we do that, can we hear a little bit about you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead, Josh.
like I said, I've been with FlyMotion and UTAC now since 2023. I grew up. I have kind of a crazy background. I grew up as a pastor for over 20 years. Got involved with our local sheriff's office as a chaplain and was doing a lot of call outs with the SWAT team and just different call outs. And so that's kind of my introduction to the world that we kind of live in now. Met FlyMotion on a call out after Hurricane Ian. I was deployed down in South Florida for about 29 of the 32 days that the sheriff's office I was with was down there. FlyMotion was there doing mapping missions and some different things. And so that was my first exposure to FlyMotion. They kind of rolled in and I was like, man, this is a crazy looking company. They came, I don't know, y'all had like 4 Tahoes deep. Trident was there. It just equipment coming out. And I was like, I don't know what they do, but they do it really cool. So met them there, and a couple years later had the opportunity to start with them doing events, and then very quickly took over UTAC and some other positions as well.
This is really a very cool and compelling industry. My first trade show in this industry 20 years ago, I'm like, wow, these guys are really interesting and cool and scary, and I have to be a part of it. It's very, very compelling. I want to back up a little. What was it like being a chaplain for a SWAT team?
So, it's I guess it's kind of similar to a lot of different chaplain type things. It's caring for people, right? Sure. And so it's being relational with people, building those relationships, not just with the agency members, but with their families, and just kind of providing that moral support or that backing to know that there's somebody you can go talk to, there's somebody you can go sit with, there's somebody that has your back. And so for me, it was super fulfilling. It kind of checked the pastor box, but I also got to play in some really cool environments and get to know some really cool people. And a lot of it still applies to what we do with UTAC. Everything in this industry is relationally driven. And so for me, I have a great time getting to know the different agency members, different vendors, different just the people in the industry. It's been a ton of fun. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Ryan? How did you get here?
Yeah. So
And then I want to hear how you stole him from God.
Well, I am from the Utah originally, so quite a religious state there. But so went in the Coast Guard. I was active duty Coast Guard, doing drug and migrant interdiction, and then transitioned once my enlistment was up. I got into public safety. Initially, started working with fire rescue. As a firefighter paramedic, and then went to the sheriff's office and spent my last 10 years as a SWAT operator, also a medic as well. And basically, I was the guy on the team that liked to mess around and play with technology. I started bringing drones and kind of playing around with drone technology about 13 years ago.
What was the early drone technology like?
Well, you had to learn to read Chinese and try to figure out where to source, parts and pieces, and it's been crazy to see where we are today. Fast forward just over a decade. Back then, it was a lot of showing the technology to people, and they would literally make the comment of, "We'll never use those toys." That was probably what I heard the most. And so really just kind of started with drones, and ended up co-founding FlyMotion just about 12 years ago. And then, as I mentioned, we eventually, a few years after founding FlyMotion, we started the concept of UTAC, launched UTAC in 2019. And then just a couple of years ago, we basically bifurcated the organizations. And UTAC sits under a holding company now, but basically the whole goal and purpose was to really get the technology in people's hands.
And with UTAC, you started now Hyperrealistic training, and that's the big go-to, and that's what we're looking forward to seeing at Warrior West. So can you tell us a little bit more about that Hyperrealistic training and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, so that's always been a big part of UTAC. So even in the early years, the goal wasn't, there's plenty of shows out there, there's plenty of events out there that show technology on a table. So the videos are always going to look right, they're always going to operate right. They sit it on a table in the air condition, it's always going to fire up, the battery's always charged, right? It always operates the way they sell it. What we wanted to do was take that technology out of the trade show floor and really put it in the environment that they're going to use it in. And so a lot of the goal for UTAC is training, obviously, but it's also getting that equipment out into the environment that it's going to be in, so that operators can get their hands and around it and actually touch and feel and fly and see how it operates in those environments. But if you're going to do training, it's not just good enough to put the equipment in the environment. You also want the operator to be in the environment, because again, rarely is an operator going to sit in a sterile environment and not have somebody breathing down his throat, or not having, stressors and things like that.
And it's amazing how in the early, and by early, like 5 years ago days of drone technology, nobody was thinking about that. I've been to more than one demo where a product didn't work because it was raining. Like, this has to work in the rain and the wind, because the war doesn't stop for the sun. It's really amazing the difference that makes.
Yeah, I mean, even now when we do training, smaller trainings, not necessarily the big event. I was at a training Monday, and it started snowing outside, and we didn't shut down the training to wait and get the equipment inside and dry it off. Like, we just operated, because that's the environment it's got to operate in. And that's the environment that the operators have to get used to operating in. So things like, hey, the touchscreen, you have to wipe it off to get the touchscreen to work. Those are things that hopefully when they go through the UTAC training, that experience, they're getting that hands-on training, so that they know what to do when these things pop up. They've already seen an iteration of it or something similar to it. And so for us, it's mirroring the hyperrealistic scenario environment and the technology in a way that, I can see this working on an operation, or this absolutely does not work on an operation. And we're not trying to push a specific technology or specific brand. We want them to be able to walk away and say, man, I've tried that. That's good. I now know how I can operate my equipment in this environment, but I also see some new stuff that's coming down the pipe that, man, I want to get my hands on that as well. And so it works great for both the vendors and the agencies and organizations that come through UTAC.
I was actually curious about that. How do you go about vetting the vendors that you work with?
That's a good question.
Well, I would assume that you see a lot of success and also some failures, right? Because we saw recently at JPMRC up in Alaska that one of the things that happened is no one could use a tablet without getting frostbite. They couldn't get their fingers out of the glove to use the tablet, and that's part of the excitement of it, right? Is you learn when things go badly. So I'm just curious what you see and how you go about deciding who's going to be a part of your organization.
I think for us, part of the how we decide is are they selling to that industry, right? Are they in the defense industry? Are they in the public safety industry? Are they in the federal industry? So that's the first part of it. The second part of it, we kind of put back on the vendors and say, hey, this is going to be in a hyper-realistic environment. They're going to use this in the rain if it's raining. They're going to use this in the snow if it's snowing. And it's not up to me to make your technology work. So I'm kind of giving you the heads up as you go into this. And we also tell the attendees the same thing. This is real world, right? So there's going to be breakdown in technology. There's going to be communications that drop during the event, but that's what happens in the real world. And so you're going to see our team pivot as we do these different environments and we do these different scenarios. You're going to see technology win, some technology may not. And we do an after action so we can answer questions. Hey, what failed? Why did it fail? What's the problem there? And that helps vendors and attendees both kind of walk away with a better picture of capabilities and what's possible.
I think on that note, one of the things that we've heard from a lot of the actual attendees, which are ultimately the end users, right, is being able to see the technology used and, the disclaimers out there, right, that, hey, things may not work, right? These are real world type environments. And I think what it does for the technology vendors, for example, is it provides a much higher level of confidence for the end users that those vendors that are there showcasing in that type environment because, I think to Josh's point, right, a lot of times we see, these demonstrations that are not real world at all. They're never how the technology or the capabilities are going to be used operationally. And at the end of the day, stuff goes right, stuff goes wrong. That's just the nature of the way it goes. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing is those vendors that have come out, participated in a UTAC event. They're getting a little more attention from the end users because they respect the fact that they put the technology into those type stressed environments. And I did want to add on, we talked about the term hyper-realistic. And, I think for the listeners and the watchers, what exactly does hyper-realistic mean? And one of the things that has been a big focus at UTAC is being able to create, those stressful environments, everything from real weapon systems, firing blanks, so you get the sound, you get the feel of it, flashbangs going off, full CQB operations with, tactical teams and assault forces, doing explosive breaching, and all these different, even role players, blood and moulage and, things like that, trying to bridge the gap between tactics and technology. And, I think many times I can, only speak for my own background, but many times I think we even train a lot of times in a perfect kind of environment that, you don't always have these stressors that you may have operationally. And so that's been a big focus, really the hyper-realism is incorporating those different things because, you do operate different in an environment like that.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Having that ability to understand how the equipment will work when everything goes right and when everything goes wrong. You described a few scenarios, even just up to breachers or smoke or flashbangs. Like sometimes they go off and sometimes they don't. What do you do? And Josh, when we were talking the other day, I thought it was real interesting. You made that comment, this using these robotics as a part of these entries and these exercises, but it's to help people save lives, both for the end users using it and whether it's the target in the building or the hostage rescue or just something on the not personal safety, but emergency services type safety, that kind of stuff, that integration's great. Where have you all seen some success with that? Like what kind of feedback are you getting from then customers who, after the fact, after a UTAC, are reaching back out and saying like, hey, this is how it helped?
We've heard actually quite a bit of that from end users that have gone to UTAC, and I honestly right now the organization is slipping my mind, but they had a pretty extensive operation about a week after UTAC and 2 years ago, and they wrote in and said that everything that they did and they learned at UTAC, they literally were able to implement, and they had never encountered even a training environment. They had never even trained on this type of scenario. And so, historically, we're hearing a lot of that type of feedback. There's a survey that goes out to all attendees and all vendors at the end of UTAC. And one of the things that is taken from that is UTAC is an annual event, and the annual event has always looked different every year. There's parts and pieces that may carry over, but it's that attendee feedback of hey, the mission tempo, or something has changed, or hey, we're starting to see nefarious actors or bad people, right, use different tactics. So we want to try to implement different things, and it kind of morphs every year into something a little different. And so I think that is kind of another thing that people are able to take out of it is, those that have come historically, over the years, it's always been a different event each and every year.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll tell you another example of that. We were with an agency that had done some training with us. And one of the coolest parts for me is to watch an agency go from running a scenario without equipment, being briefed on, hey, here's some capabilities that we're bringing to the table with this equipment, and then watching the light kind of click on and seeing how they changed their tactics and changed the way they would approach a building or change the way they clear a structure or change the way they operate, because now they have an understanding of the tactics and they have an understanding of the capability of the technology. And so those are some of those places where we see immediate change in potential tactics for an agency that all of a sudden makes a breach much safer, all of a sudden makes that CQB much breacher, all of a sudden, we can clear cubicles much safer. And the light kind of clicks, and now as they understand the technology better, they begin to be more creative with how they can implement the technology that they have at their fingertips. And so that's another a piece of that's always really cool to watch.
So in terms of the things that UTAC can do in addition to your annual event, you were at a training the other day. Do you also offer, I guess, individualized or specific trainings for? I know you're going to come to us and do really cool scenarios that we're definitely going to talk about a little bit later, but do you also offer the ability for end users to reach out to you and set up something that's specific for their agencies, or how else does that work?
Yeah, they definitely could. And most of the training that is implemented or done, I would say, is usually customized to the end user's requirements. So, while there may be base fundamentals of everybody's, operational TTPs, what we're seeing is, everybody kind of wants their flavor of what they, are looking to do. That is something that, you're basically going to see where UTAC is kind of expanding on that portfolio as well, with different individualized trainings. And, one of the things that was announced last October was, the UTAC instructor cadre program and some things that, are kind of expanding the overall UTAC, kind of portfolio of offerings.
I'm ready to get into it.
Me too.
I want to talk about Warrior West.
April 29th and 30th in San Diego.
That's right. Yeah, sounds like you guys have some great stuff laid on, Warrior West. So in the past, we've done it at the convention center down there, but we've recently moved it to the Town and Country, which is the sort of the former convention area down there. So we've got we got a hotel, we got some pools, we got some conference space. Tell us a little bit about what you all have planned at Warrior for us.
Yeah, so really excited about it. We got on campus, and initially I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So it was fun kind of walking around with Rachel and seeing the different environments and kind of hearing how West was going to lay out. I'd been to East before. I hadn't been to West, so it was good for me to kind of see in person. And as we're looking at the different environments and looking at some of the different options, one of the things we want to keep in mind too is the kind of the attendee base.
Sure.
And so making sure we're developing scenarios that meet the attendees and aren't, outlandish. The other thing is trying to create a variety of scenarios so that we can involve several different vendors, several different backgrounds, several different kind of specialties, so that it's not all focused around, just drones or just entry or just, so we want to mix it up a little bit. So we've got 3 scenarios that we're pretty excited about. We're going to do a medevac scenario. We have an HVT scenario and an HR scenario. And so those are 3 different scenarios we're going to have built out. We're going to get to involve a lot of different vendors, a lot of different, hopefully, technology, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I've never had the chance to attend UTAC, which I feel like is going to change. And I haven't really seen these kinds of scenario-based trainings. Could you give us a little peek into what one or any of the scenarios might look like for the folks that are going to come to the show? Unless you don't want to share the secret sauce.
Yeah, I think we'll give kind of a high level.
That's fine.
But
That's fine.
We'll hold the details for those that are coming. So
Absolutely.
keep something fun for them to be surprised about. In essence, the goal is going to be cross domain kind of technology and in an operational environment. So as Josh was kind of mentioned, with the Town and Country Resort, I think even though it's a resort, it's got a lot of different kind of space and capabilities that we can incorporate into some of these different scenarios. So being able to see, when I mentioned cross domain or kind of the end-to-end ecosystem, drones, robotics, could be some different USVs, on the maritime side, even getting into an assault force, different things like that.
Well, if you need any role players, both Patrick and I have some theatrical background. We're ready. Put us in.
Nice. Very true, yes.
I like it. I like it.
So some of the scenarios we have built out, like I said, one's going to be an interior scenario. So we'll get to see some of the interior technology at use. Obviously, medical, we'll have some of the medical technology at use. We're potentially going to introduce an EOD component to that. So again, that's the idea, is to get a lot of the different fields, a lot of the different specialties, if you will, and their technologies highlighted and showcased across all of the vendors that will be at ADS.
We can't tell you how excited we are to have you here because, we've done demos in the past and the show is always amazing, but we feel like this is a level up for us that, we're just really excited for anybody that hasn't registered for the show. Register now. I'm looking at the camera and telling you, register now, because this is going to be a Warrior West like none we've had before, and I'm really, really pumped about it.
Yeah. Will the scenarios be both days, or you can do them on one day in particular?
So the schedule right now, and again, we're still a little bit out, so it's subject to change. The schedule right now is we'll do, I believe, 2 on, what is the day? Wednesday. Sorry.
Yeah.
The schedule right now is we'll hopefully do 2 on Wednesday, and then we'll do 1 on Thursday.
Great.
Okay, great.
So we'll have it on both days.
Again, we're available.
Put me in. Ready to go.
Yeah, and so people will sign up to observe those, because it sounds like we're going to have some good locations there for people to see, not just kind of standing around watching, but maybe some elevated positions so they can see, from a sort of bird's eye view of what's going on. So I think it's going to be really great. It's going to be a good location and a great opportunity to see.
Yeah. So one of the things that we'll have as the scenario wraps up, and just as would happen a lot of times operationally, right? Real world is we'll go ahead and have a debrief. Kind of talking through some of the different technologies that were used in some of the different scenarios and kind of the way the TTPs were utilized in that respective scenario.
And will attendees have an opportunity to ask some questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the big thing is, it's ultimately for them, right? And the goal is, positive, negative feedback, all that stuff for the vendors, the scenario, hey, I'd like to see this maybe down the road, or being able to understand it better. That's really the goal, is it's, we like to use the term, we check the feelings at the door. When we do a debrief, it's, hey, there's no, sensitivity about it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what went well, what didn't go well. And, I think that's the way that you ultimately improve is, being able to talk through those things. And it will also be an opportunity for those vendors that are participating to get, real world feedback from the actual end users, and to better understand, how they could potentially develop future products or, adjustments to some of the current products that they may have.
Yeah, we get a lot of that post UTAC, and because we also send surveys to all of our vendors, and so that's one of the big things that they always like is that real world feedback. And there's changes in how they're integrating their technology or changes in what they're developing because of that feedback being so valuable. So I think that the after actions are going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be just as impactful, hopefully, as just seeing the scenario. So.
Oh man, that's great. Well, I'm real excited, Jen. I know you're excited. Yeah,
I am. This is going to be really a lot of fun, and I just think this is the birth of a really great partnership. So we're really excited to work with you.
Yeah.
So one of the things we like to do on the podcast is talk again a little bit more about you. And I know we spoke about this briefly and told you to make sure Ryan knew this was coming. But
I did.
Okay,
gave
good.
you warning.
So one of the things we like to know is what's your why? And either one of you can go first, but we always like to hear
Go ahead,
that.
Josh.
Go ahead. So I got the most time to think about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, what's my why? For me, obviously, being a pastor for 20 plus years, I think the two mandates that you see that I feel like I have on my life is to love God and love people. And I think being able to serve this industry and serve people, to be able to train these people, to be able to teach ways that we can, put robotic platforms in places that typically would be a person going to a door and saving, and we say potentially saving lives, but the reality is as they implement these tactics and they implement these things, it really does save lives. And so for me, that's an easy way to love people. And so, and then, like I said, it is this industry, and I think really most industries, but this industry specifically is relationships. It's relational. And so I'm a relational guy. I love the opportunity to get to know people, hear their stories, hear what they're doing, see how they're changing the world in their own ways. And so for me, it's super fulfilling.
That's great. Ryan.
Tough one to follow, Ryan.
Yeah, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I didn't get to say this. You talked about your background in the Coast Guard and in public safety. Thank you for your service. Really, it
Appreciate
means a
it.
lot.
Appreciate
So what's
it.
your why?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me is, I've really, I like to solve problems, and I like to support the mission. At the end of the day, I've, basically since leaving high school, personally, right, I've always served in some capacity, and I think this is just another way to do that. At the end of the day, there's many different facets of an operation. And I think being able to have the opportunity to, support that, I've received over the years many phone calls from people, or, messages, right, of, hey, this thing that we learned or this piece of technology that was implemented directly resulted in lives saved. And I think that, to me is very impactful. I've talked a lot over the years to our team about, is don't follow the dollars, just focus on the mission. And everything else will kind of come in place. And, that's worked well for us. We're continued to stay very focused on that. Don't get distracted by the noise, just keep focusing on the mission, and support those end users that are, out there doing the work. And, I think we're in an interesting space, globally with a lot think going on. And
That
I
is
think
an understatement.
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting to watch and see, because we've been training to this stuff for years, right? Well before, you hear a lot about FPV drones and, training on those well before Ukraine kicked off, and being able to constantly be supporting the mission and preparing those operators that are going to to be ultimately doing the work, right? To allow us the ability to sit here at a, nice little table and have a good conversation, because not everybody's afforded that opportunity, So, yeah, that's my why.
Love it. Love it.
Amazing. Again, we're really excited to have you at Warrior West on April 29th and 30th in San Diego. And we just can't wait to see it. I'm definitely going to mark my calendar and make sure that I am right there for every minute of it.
Yeah,
We're
thanks a
gonna
lot
have a
for coming
special
out.
spot
Yeah.
for you.
I like I said, you could cover me in blood. I'm open to anything.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, thanks for coming
Mark
out,
it down.
fellas. Appreciate it.
Really.
And we'll see you in a few weeks out in San Diego.
Yeah, looking
Sounds
forward
good.
to it. It's going to be fun.
Thanks
All
for
right,
being
thanks,
here.
guys.
Thank you.